My beloved child, if you've ever felt weighed down by your past, if there are moments you look back on and wonder, have I gone too far this time? Have I made too many mistakes to ever come back to God? Please know that you are not alone in feeling this way. It's a question that quietly haunts the hearts of so many, maybe even more people than you think. Maybe you've sat alone at night, replaying old memories in your mind, feeling regret for choices you wish you could undo. Or perhaps there are things you've done, words you've said, that you never imagined would come from someone like you. That feeling of distance from God, like a silence that just won't break, can sometimes feel heavier than any burden you carry in the outside world. There's a reason why this question matters so deeply, not just to those who consider themselves believers, but to anyone who's wrestled with the idea of hope. Because deep down, every human heart wants to know, is it truly possible to start over? Is forgiveness really meant for me? Even if my life is messier than I ever planned, it's easy to tell ourselves that maybe for others, yes, God can forgive anything, give them a second chance, but me after everything. That's much harder to believe. Let's talk about that, honestly, together. In this time we're sharing, I want you to feel safe enough to let your guard down. If there's pain, let it sit beside you for a moment. If there's hope, however faint, let's let it grow. We're going to explore the teachings of Jesus, stories of people who found their way back, and practical steps that can help you feel God's embrace again, no matter how long you've been away. But before we go further, I want to ask you something. When was the last time you truly felt seen, not just for your strengths or your successes, but for all the messy, broken pieces inside you? For many of us, it's been a while. Maybe you're surrounded by people every day, but you still feel like nobody really knows the battles you're fighting on the inside. Or maybe you've been putting on a brave face for so long that even you have forgotten what it's like to let your soul be honest. That's why this conversation matters. Because the story of coming back to God isn't just about religious ritual or checking off boxes on a list. It's about being known, deeply and truly, and being loved anyway. Imagine someone looking at the very worst part of your story, the chapters you hope no one ever reads, and saying, "Yes, I see it. I still want you. Come home." Maybe you grew up with stories about a God who was always waiting, arms open, but somehow along the way, you lost sight of that. Maybe church or family or even your own conscience made you feel that God is keeping a tally, that every failure pushes you farther away. But if you listen to the words of Jesus, the stories he told, the people he chose, the moments he paused for the outcast and the sinner, you'll notice something surprising. He never asked people to fix themselves before coming home. He simply invited them to return, just as they were. Let me tell you a story, one that you might know, or maybe you're hearing for the first time. There was a man who had everything at his fingertips. A loving father, a safe home. One day, he demanded his share of inheritance and left, chasing after a life he thought would make him happy. But it wasn't long before he realized that the path he chose was empty. He lost his money, his friends disappeared, and soon he was alone, starving, longing for even the scraps of food the pigs were eating. At his lowest moment, he remembered his father's house, the safety, the warmth, the love he'd thrown away. He wondered, would my father take me back even as a servant? It was a risk. But he made the journey home, rehearsing his apology all the way. But here's the part that always catches my breath when his father saw him from far off. He ran. He didn't wait for explanations. He didn't ask for proof of repentance. He simply wrapped his arms around his lost son and wept with joy. That's what Jesus wants us to picture when we think of coming back to God. Maybe you've been away a long time. Maybe you keep coming close, then backing away because shame and fear creep in. But I want you to imagine, for a moment, what it would feel like if God ran to meet you, right where you are. No accusations, no lectures, just open arms and a celebration because you are home. If that feels impossible, I understand. But the truth is, it's the heart of Jesus' message. Over and over, he said, "I have not come to call the righteous, but sinners to repentance." Not the perfect ones, the real ones. the wounded ones, the ones who know what it's like to fail and long for another chance. So as we begin this journey together, I invite you to let go of the voices telling you it's too late. Set aside the heavy list of your mistakes for a moment. Let's open ourselves to the possibility that no matter how many wrong turns you've taken, the path home is still open, that the first step doesn't require you to have it all together, it just asks for a willing heart. And if you don't know what to say to God, if it's been so long you're not even sure where to begin, that's okay too. Sometimes the best prayers are just a whisper, "Help me." Sometimes they're silent tears or the ache in your chest that longs for things to be different. My friend, you are not disqualified by your mistakes. In fact, the whole story of Jesus is for people who need a fresh start. That includes you. As we go on, I'll share with you some of the reasons it's so hard to believe in a second chance and the gentle ways Jesus breaks down those walls for us. For now, let's sit together in the hope that it is possible to come home. You are not alone. Maybe as you sit with these words, part of you feels a small glimmer of hope, but another part still resists, arms crossed tight over old wounds. I understand that, more than you know. For so many of us, the hardest part isn't believing that God is willing to forgive, but believing that He could possibly want us, with our history, with all the moments we'd rather hide. Let's take a moment to be honest. There's something deeply human about clinging to regret, like an old jacket you can't quite throw away. Sometimes we wear it to protect ourselves from hope, because hope can hurt when we're afraid it will let us down. Sometimes we keep replaying our mistakes in our minds, almost as a way to punish ourselves, to pay for the past in a way no one else can see. Other times, it just feels safer to stay stuck than to risk disappointment. What if we come back to God, only to find more silence? What if nothing changes? But my friend, if you hear nothing else today, I want you to remember this Jesus was never interested in keeping people stuck in the past. Over and over, He met people at their lowest at the well, at the tax collector's table, even caught in the act of shame, and He offered something different. He looked them in the eyes and saw beyond what they had done. He saw who they were, not defined by the sum of their mistakes, but by the hope of who they could become in Him. One of the most beautiful things about the life of Jesus is that He wasn't afraid to get close to brokenness. He touched lepers, ate with sinners, listened to those the world had written off. He knew the stories behind their scars, the battles they'd fought in secret, and each time His message was clear. Your value doesn't vanish because you messed up. You are still loved. You still belong. But let's get practical. What does it actually look like to take that first step back? Maybe the idea of returning to God feels too big or too mysterious, something reserved for saints or people who have their lives in order. But returning can be as simple as a whisper in your heart, a turning of your face toward home. It's not about grand gestures or dramatic promises you can't keep. It starts with honesty, with God, and with yourself. You might say, "God, I don't know how to fix what's broken. I don't even know if I believe you can love me after everything I've done. But I want to try. I want to come back." That's enough. You don't need the right words. You don't need to have all the answers. All you need is a little bit of willingness, just enough to crack open the door. Sometimes people wonder if there's a ritual or a checklist, a formula that guarantees acceptance. But Jesus never gave a formula. He just offered Himself. The story of the prodigal son didn't end with the father handing out a list of rules or a contract. It ended with a feast, a celebration. The return was enough. So what holds us back for many of us? It's shame, the quiet voice that says, "You're too dirty. You knew better. You've failed too many times." Shame isolates us, convincing us that we're the only ones with scars. But the truth is, everyone you admire, every person who seems close to God, has walked their own road of failure and forgiveness. They aren't immune to regret, they just learned not to let it define them. If shame is whispering to you, I want you to know God's voice is stronger. He says, "Come, let us reason together. Though your sins are like scarlet, they shall be as white as snow." That's not just poetry, it's a promise. Still, maybe your regret runs deeper. Maybe you're struggling with consequences you can't undo, relationships strained, trust broken, opportunities lost. Sometimes the past leaves marks that won't simply disappear with a prayer, and that's real. God doesn't ask us to pretend those wounds don't exist, but He does promise to walk with us as we heal, to help us rebuild even when it feels impossible. Sometimes forgiveness and restoration are slow, a journey of tiny steps. Sometimes it means reaching out to those we've hurt, asking for forgiveness, or simply allowing ourselves to be forgiven, one layer at a time. And you're not meant to do it alone. That's one of the gifts Jesus gives us, the community of others who have fallen and gotten up again, who can walk alongside you, listen to your story, and remind you that you're not hopeless. Sometimes it means finding a safe person to talk to, a friend, a pastor, or even just a fellow traveler on the journey back to faith. There's another fear that can creep in. What if I fail again? What if I try to change, but slip back into old patterns? My friend, that fear is real, and it's okay to name it. The path home is rarely straight. Sometimes you will stumble, but grace isn't a one-time offer. It's renewed each morning, just as sure as the sunrise. Jesus told His followers to forgive 70 times 7, not because He wanted us to keep score, but because He knew we'd need more chances than we could count. If He asked us to forgive each other that much, imagine how patient He is with us. So, if your steps are shaky, if you worry that you'll never be strong enough to stay on the right path, take comfort. The God who calls you home walks beside you every step of the way. You're not asked to run, you're just asked to take the next small step. Let's pause for a moment. Take a breath. Allow yourself to imagine what it would be like to lay down the heavy bag of regret and shame you've been carrying. Imagine hearing God say, "You're enough. I want you back. Not because you fixed everything, but because I love you as you are." As we continue, I invite you to consider one small way you might turn toward God today. Maybe it's a prayer. Maybe it's a conversation. Maybe it's just allowing yourself to hope, for the first time in a long time, that you really can come back. Maybe today you're finding it hard to trust that a new beginning could be possible for someone like you. Maybe you've tried before, promised yourself you'd turn over a new leaf, get things right, make amends, and it just didn't stick. It's so easy to feel discouraged when old habits pull us back, when the voice in our head tells us we're only fooling ourselves, that we're doomed to repeat the same patterns forever. But my friend, the journey of coming back to God isn't a single leap. It's 1,000 tiny steps, sometimes forward, sometimes back, always with grace waiting to catch you. I think about the people Jesus loved, most the ones He sought out, the ones He lingered with in the dusty streets, the ones who were always falling short by the world's standards. There was the woman caught in adultery, brought out before the crowd to be humiliated and judged. All eyes turned to Jesus, waiting for Him to condemn her. But He didn't. He knelt down, wrote something in the dust, and then He looked at her with such gentleness. "Neither do I condemn you." He said, "Go and sin no more." It's a simple phrase, but it changes everything. Jesus didn't pretend she hadn't made mistakes. He didn't excuse what she'd done, but He offered a way forward, a new story, a clean page. If you've ever stood in the center of your own shame, wondering if you're too far gone, I want you to remember that scene. Jesus didn't turn away. He didn't pile on more guilt. He offered mercy and a new beginning. That same mercy is still offered to you. Maybe you're someone who has grown up with the idea that you have to work your way back to God, to make up for the past by being extra good, extra faithful, extra everything. But that's not the way Jesus worked. His closest followers weren't people who had never failed. They were fishermen, tax collectors, doubters, and even a man who denied Him 3 times in one night. Peter, for example, had promised Jesus he would never abandon him. But when fear pressed in, Peter pretended he didn't even know Him. Afterwards, Peter wept bitterly, ashamed, convinced he'd ruined everything. And yet, after the resurrection, Jesus came looking for Peter. He cooked him breakfast on the shore, spoke to him gently, and invited him to try again. Feed my sheep. Jesus didn't erase Peter's failure, but he restored him and trusted him with a new purpose. You may not have denied Jesus in a public square, but you may have denied him in quieter ways by choosing comfort over conviction, by letting fear keep you silent, by walking away when you wish you'd stood firm. Yet, if you listen for it, you'll hear the same invitation Jesus gave Peter. Come forward, let's start again. There's still a place for you here. And then there's Paul, a man who spent the early years of his life actively fighting against the message of Jesus, hunting down his followers, convinced he was doing the right thing. If there was anyone who seemed disqualified from grace, it was Paul, but Jesus met him on the road, in the middle of his worst moment, and changed his life. Paul would go on to write some of the most moving words about grace and forgiveness ever recorded. While we were still sinners, Christ died for us. Not after we'd gotten it all together, not after we'd paid our dues, but right in the middle of our mess. This is the heartbeat of the gospel. You can always come home. You can always begin again. I know sometimes forgiveness feels like an impossible dream, not just because you wonder if God will give it, but because it's so hard to forgive yourself. Maybe you keep thinking about people you've hurt, opportunities you've wasted, the person you wish you could have been. It can be a heavy weight to carry, day after day. But here's the thing. Carrying guilt and shame doesn't make you more worthy of forgiveness. It just wears you down. God isn't asking you to punish yourself. He's inviting you to let him carry the burden. Jesus spoke about this, saying, "Come to me, all who are weary and burdened, and I will give you rest." He wasn't just talking about physical exhaustion. He meant the exhaustion that comes from a lifetime of regret and self-condemnation. So what can you do when you feel stuck, unable to believe in a new beginning? Sometimes the first step is as simple as honesty. You might pray, "God, I want to believe that you can forgive me, but I'm struggling. Help me let go of the shame I'm holding on to. Help me see myself the way you see me." Other times, it means allowing yourself to receive kindness from others, letting friends or family remind you that you are loved, even when you can't feel it for yourself. And remember, change doesn't happen overnight. Coming back to God is like learning to walk again after an injury. You may wobble, fall, get frustrated with your own progress, but every step counts. Every time you choose to turn your heart toward hope, to reach out for grace, to try again, you are building something beautiful. If you find it hard to believe any of this, try looking for small glimpses of grace in your everyday life. Notice the kindness of a stranger, the warmth of the sun after a long rain, the simple joy of being alive today. Sometimes God whispers hope through the ordinary, inviting you to trust that mercy is still possible. You're not meant to do this alone either. Community matters. Maybe you've avoided church or faith gatherings because you fear judgment or rejection, but there are safe places, safe people, who know what it's like to be broken and still beloved. Don't be afraid to seek them out, to let others walk with you. Sometimes just sharing your story is the first step toward healing. And finally, remember, you don't have to have it all figured out to come home. God isn't looking for perfection. He's looking for a willing heart. Even if your prayer is just a whisper, even if you have more questions than answers, even if all you can say is, "I want to try," that's enough. You are not disqualified by your mistakes. You are not defined by your worst moments. You are loved, you are wanted, and there is always a way back. Let your heart rest in that hope. Even if it feels fragile, tomorrow is another day. Grace is new every morning. Maybe you're listening to this and you're thinking, all of this sounds good, but my story isn't so simple. Maybe your past isn't just a few bad decisions, but a whole tangled web years of hurt, maybe even secrets that no one else knows. Sometimes the shame we carry feels too deep, like a stain that can't be washed out. No matter how hard we try, it's easy in those moments to feel like God's forgiveness is for other people. People who haven't gone so far, who haven't wandered so long. But that isn't the story Jesus tells. Jesus is the one who left the 99 sheep to go after the one that was lost. Not the sheep that got stuck in a bush for a moment, but the one who wandered off and couldn't find its way back. Maybe you feel like that lost one. Maybe you've tried before to come back, but old habits keep pulling you under. You might be asking, why would God bother with me? Why not just let me go? But the heart of Jesus is relentless in its pursuit. He doesn't weigh your worth by the number of times you fell or the years you spent away. He sees the longing in you to come home, even if it's just a flicker. In fact, it's often in the moments when we feel most lost that His love becomes the most real. The truth is, you don't have to find your way back on your own. God comes to meet you, even in the dark, even in the mess, even in the silence when you aren't sure how to pray. There's a story Jesus tells about a woman who lost a coin, something small but precious. She turns the house upside down searching for it, lighting lamps, sweeping every corner, not resting until it's found. When she finds it, she calls her friends and neighbors and celebrates. That's how God feels about you. No mistake, no regret, no lost year makes you worthless in His eyes. He searches for you. He rejoices when you take even a single step toward Him. It's hard to believe. I know. Maybe you've been told that you have to earn your way back, prove yourself, make up for the damage, fix everything before you can be loved again. Maybe you've been let down by people who promised forgiveness but never really offered it. But God's love doesn't keep score. He doesn't ask for proof that you're worth the effort. His heart is already set on you. Even so, there's a part of us that resists this kind of grace. Maybe you find yourself building walls telling yourself that you're fine, or that it's too late, or that you'll try again someday when you're better. But sometimes someday never comes. Sometimes we keep ourselves away, not because God is far, but because we're afraid of what it means to be seen so clearly, so honestly. But what if, instead of waiting until you feel ready, you let yourself come as you are right now? No hiding, no pretending, no rehearsing your apology. Just the real you, tired and tangled and longing for peace. That's the you God wants. That's the you He already loves. Maybe you're worried that coming back to God will mean facing pain you've buried for a long time. It's true, sometimes healing means facing what hurts, but you don't have to do it all at once. You don't have to open every door in your heart today. God is patient. He takes your hand and walks with you, one step at a time. Some days, all you can do is whisper a single word, help. Some days, you'll have more questions than answers. That's okay. Faith isn't about never doubting. It's about trusting enough to take one more step. There may be people in your life who can't let go of your past. Maybe you struggle to forgive yourself. But God's forgiveness isn't limited by anyone else's opinion, not even your own. When He says you're forgiven, He means it. He doesn't hang your mistakes over your head. He calls you beloved. He calls you home. You might be wondering what it looks like, practically, to come back to God after a long time away. Sometimes it's as simple as speaking honestly to Him wherever you are, however you feel. There are no magic words, no secret formula, just honesty. God, I'm tired. I'm lost. I want to come home, but I don't know how. Sometimes it's reaching out to someone you trust, letting them in on your struggle. Sometimes it's picking up a Bible or just sitting in silence for a few minutes, allowing yourself to hope. If you feel stuck, unable to move forward, remember that you're not expected to do this alone. God often sends people into our lives, friends, mentors, even strangers, to walk with us, encourage us, remind us of who we really are. Don't be afraid to let others in. There's no shame in needing support. In fact, reaching out is an act of courage, a step of faith in itself. And don't be discouraged by slow progress. Change takes time. Healing takes time. God isn't rushing you. Every day you choose hope. Every time you say yes to grace, you're taking another step home. Some days you'll feel the weight of your past more heavily. Other days you'll feel the lightness of new beginnings. Both are part of the journey. Trust that God is with you in both the hard days and the hopeful ones. If all you do today is decide to keep trying, that's enough. God's love doesn't run out. There's always room for you, always another chance. The story isn't over. Your life still matters. So as you go forward, let yourself believe, even if it's just a little, that you're not too far gone, that forgiveness is real, that coming back is always possible. No matter where you've been or what you've done, take heart. Grace is waiting for you, right now, just as you are. Sometimes, when you finally decide to open your heart and let God back in, you expect to feel something dramatic, a rush of joy, a sudden sense of freedom, and sometimes that happens. But often, the change is quiet and gradual, like a seed planted deep in the soil. For a while, nothing seems to happen. Life keeps moving. The doubts return. The world doesn't pause to cheer you on. You may even wonder if you really change anything at all. But don't let that discourage you. Growth happens in hidden places, in the small choices you make every day. Sometimes the greatest miracle isn't a thunderclap from heaven, but simply not giving up. It's deciding, again and again, to believe that you're loved, to forgive yourself one more time, to start over as many times as it takes. That's real courage. Think of all the stories in Scripture, all the people Jesus called to follow him. None of them had easy roads. Peter stumbled and doubted. Mary Magdalene carried a heavy past. Zacchaeus was known as a cheat and an outcast. But Jesus never gave up on them. He saw past what everyone else saw, straight to the heart, and called them his friends. Their stories were changed not in an instant, but in 100 small moments of faith and trust. Maybe, for you, coming back to God will look like getting up in the morning and choosing to pray, even when you don't feel much. Maybe it's reading a single verse and letting it sit with you through the day. Maybe it's reaching out to someone you wronged, or letting go of a habit that keeps you stuck. None of these things are small to God. Each is a sign that your heart is turning toward home. If you're tempted to compare your journey to others, try to let that go. God isn't measuring you against anyone else. He knows your story, your wounds, your pace. He walks with you right where you are. Even if it feels like you're moving slowly, you're still moving. Every honest prayer, every act of kindness, every time you choose hope over fear, you're writing a new chapter with God. There will be days when you wonder if you really belong, if there's still a place for you at the table. On those days, remember the words Jesus spoke. "Come to me, all who are weary and burdened, and I will give you rest." He didn't say, "Come to me, all who have it together." He didn't put conditions on his invitation. He welcomes the tired, the burdened, the uncertain, the messy. You may still carry scars from the past, both on your heart and in your relationships. Some wounds take longer to heal than others. Sometimes the people around you won't understand or won't believe you've changed. That's okay. Your story is between you and God. People may remember who you were, but God delights in who you're becoming. One of the most beautiful things about grace is that it's not a transaction, it's a gift. You don't earn your way back. You don't pay off your mistakes. You simply receive what's freely given. That doesn't mean there aren't consequences, or that you won't have to work through pain. But it does mean that forgiveness is always possible, that hope is never out of reach. Sometimes you might think, this is all too good to be true. There must be a catch. But God's love is deeper than your doubts. He's not waiting for you to fail again so he can take back his forgiveness. He's not keeping a ledger of your shortcomings. He's the Father watching the road, waiting for you to come home, ready to celebrate every step you take toward him. If you've been living with regret, haunted by the feeling that you've wasted too much time or done too much harm, know this with God: nothing is wasted. Even your failures can become part of a new story. The places you stumbled can become places where others find hope, because you've walked that road and survived. Your life, every broken piece of it, matters. Take a moment now and breathe. Let yourself feel the truth that you are seen. You are valued. You are wanted. You don't have to be perfect to come back. You don't have to have all the answers. You just have to be willing to begin again, as many times as it takes. If your heart is tired, if your soul feels worn, let these words be your invitation. Come home, not just once, but every day. Let God love you in all the places you think are unlovable. Let Him show you that the story isn't over, that new life is possible, even for you. You're not alone on this road. There are others walking beside you, whether you see them or not. And above all, God Himself walks with you, step by step, with patience and kindness. When you falter, He steadies you. When you wander, He calls you back. When you fall, He lifts you up. As you continue this journey, trust that grace will meet you again and again. Your story is unfolding, and God delights in every page. Maybe by now, something inside you has softened, just a little. Maybe there's still a part of you that wonders, could I really matter to God? Even now, can my life still have purpose, even after all I've done? These are honest questions. The ache behind them is real. So many people go through life quietly believing that they're disqualified from the things that matter most, that forgiveness, love, or meaning are for someone else. But what if the opposite is true? What if your very brokenness is the place where hope can grow? If you think about it, some of the most powerful stories of faith are born in the darkest places. When you read about people who changed the world for good, those who lifted others up, who brought light into suffering, you'll find that many of them had to walk through deep valleys before they could help anyone else. Their strength didn't come from always getting it right. It grew from learning that even in their lowest moments, God was still with them, still loving them, still calling them forward. Maybe your story isn't one you'd choose to tell, at least not the parts that hurt or shame you, but every day you choose to get up and keep going, to reach for hope even with trembling hands. You are doing something brave. You are showing someone, maybe someone watching quietly from the sidelines, that it's possible to begin again. Sometimes the most important ministry you'll ever have isn't on a stage or with a microphone, but in your quiet daily faithfulness, in the way you treat others, the way you forgive, the way you refuse to let shame have the last word. Your story, even with all its scars, can become a source of comfort and strength for someone else. You may not realize who's watching, who's drawing courage from your willingness to come back to God, to own your mistakes, to keep loving even when it's hard. Maybe it's a child, a friend, or even a stranger who simply notices something different in the way you carry yourself. You don't have to be perfect for your life to matter. You just have to be real. Sometimes after coming back to God, you'll have moments where you feel completely alone, like no one else could possibly understand what you're going through. But God is with you, even in the loneliness. There's a kind of sacredness in walking through the wilderness, a closeness you can't explain but somehow know deep down. Some of your most meaningful prayers may come not in church, but in the quiet of your own heart, when all you can do is whisper, God, please don't let go of me. And He won't. He never does. On those days when you question whether anything you do makes a difference, remember this faithfulness isn't always flashy. It's the gentle repetition of trust, the slow rebuilding of hope, the courage to keep turning your heart toward God, even when it's hard. Every single act of kindness, every small decision to forgive, every prayer that rises from a wounded place matters more than you know. God sees it all. Nothing is wasted. If there are still pieces of your story you wish you could erase, remember that redemption is not about pretending the past didn't happen. It's about letting God weave even the hardest chapters into something good. Sometimes, you'll find that the places you thought were ruined beyond repair become the very places God uses to bring light to someone else. Don't be afraid to tell the truth about your journey to God, to yourself, and maybe one day, to someone who needs to hear it. Honesty is where healing begins. The world is full of people pretending they're fine, but what changes lives is someone who's willing to be real. When you tell your story, the whole story, not just the highlights, you invite others to be honest too. You give them permission to hope. As you keep moving forward, let yourself be open to new beginnings. Maybe there are relationships that need mending, or new dreams God is planting in your heart. Maybe there are opportunities to serve, to encourage, to simply show up for someone who's struggling. Don't let the fear of the past keep you from stepping into what's next. God is always doing something new, And He invites you to be part of it, not because you're flawless, but because you're willing. If today feels ordinary, if you're not sure what comes next, just keep showing up. Keep trusting that grace is enough for you. Right here, right now. You don't have to have all the answers. You just have to keep your heart open, your hands willing, your faith alive, even if it's just a flicker. Your journey matters. The steps you take, even when they're small, are moving you closer to a life full of meaning, full of love, full of hope. And as you walk this path, you're never alone. Even after all these words, maybe you're still left with questions. Maybe you're still wrestling with the old doubts, the old voices that say you're not good enough, that you've missed your chance, that some mistakes are too big to forgive. That's okay. Healing is rarely instant. Even the bravest hearts take time to believe new things. Sometimes, it's not about never feeling doubt again, but about learning to move forward anyway, choosing to trust, even when you can't see the whole path ahead. If you find yourself thinking, why would God bother with me? I'm just one person with a long list of failures. Remember this: God's heart beats for you, not for the person you wish you could be, not for your best version on your best day, but for you right here, right now, in all your realness. There's nothing you have to prove, no test you have to pass, no list you have to complete. You are enough, simply because you are loved. So as you close your eyes at night or wake to a new morning, let your first thought be this: God, thank you for loving me, even in the mess. Thank you for believing in me, even when I doubt. Help me take just one more step toward you today. That's all you need. Grace isn't a finish line, it's a daily invitation. And if you feel stuck or discouraged, if your progress seems slow or your burdens feel heavy, don't give up. Don't let shame tell you that you're alone. You are never beyond the reach of God's kindness. Each day is a fresh start, a new page in the story He's writing with your life. Some pages will be bright and full of joy, others will be darker, marked with struggle, but every word matters. Every chapter is precious to Him. Maybe, over time, you'll discover that what you thought were only scars have become signs of healing. The places where you once felt weakest are now the very places where you're able to offer comfort to others. That is the miracle of God's love. It doesn't erase our pain, but transforms it, giving it meaning and purpose, turning even the hardest moments into gifts for someone else. If you're still longing for restoration in a relationship, or if you're grieving something lost along the way, take heart. Some things take time. Some wounds will heal slowly. But healing is always possible, and new life always waits on the other side of surrender. Keep trusting, keep hoping, keep letting God meet you right where you are. I want you to know truly that your presence in this world matters. Your journey, messy, imperfect, and full of restarts, is a story worth telling. You have something to offer, a kindness, a wisdom, a courage that someone else needs. Don't hide your story, let it shine. Let your life be a quiet testament to the power of forgiveness and the beauty of starting again. If you ever find yourself slipping back, doubting your worth, or feeling like you don't belong, remember God's door is always open. His invitation is always waiting. There is no too late. There is no too far gone. Every breath you take is a new chance to turn toward Him, to let His love wash over you and give you peace. So as you go on from here, maybe with hope, maybe with fear, maybe with a heart that's a little more open, know that you're not alone. There's a whole family of faith cheering you on, and a loving God walking with you every step. Take small steps, celebrate little victories, be gentle with yourself, and above all, never stop coming back to grace. If you found any comfort or hope in these words, I invite you to share your thoughts in the comments. Your story might be the encouragement someone else needs to take their own step home. If this journey has blessed you, consider subscribing to the channel and joining us for more honest conversations about faith, forgiveness, and starting over. You are loved. You are welcome. You are never too far gone. May you live with a heart open to grace, And may you always know deep down that coming back to God is always possible, no matter what. Maybe as we reach this final chapter together, you feel a quiet peace settling over your heart. Or maybe you're still a little unsure, wondering if all these words can really be true for you. Let yourself rest for a moment. Take a slow, deep breath. You don't have to rush. Every journey home is different. Some roads are long and winding. Some are marked with many stops and starts. Some days you'll feel strong, and some days you'll just feel tired. But wherever you are on the road, you are not traveling alone. If you need a sign to keep going, let this be it. You are not your mistakes. You are not your failures. You are a beloved child, wanted and welcomed, now and always. Let these words stay with you. You can always begin again. Forgiveness is never out of reach. Love is not something you must earn. It is a gift that is yours on today and every day. And if you ever find yourself doubting, come back to this place. Listen again. Remember how many others have walked the same road, have wrestled with the same fears, and have found hope in the end. God's grace is wider than your regrets, and His mercy is deeper than your sorrow. No shadow is too dark for His light to reach. No story is too broken for Him to redeem. Before we close, I'd like to offer a simple prayer, a blessing for you, wherever you are. A prayer for coming home. God of mercy, you see every heart that is listening now. You know every story, every tear, every hidden regret. Thank you for loving us not in spite of our failures, but because we are yours. Thank you for the second, third, and thousandth chances you give us. Give strength to the weary, hope to the discouraged, and peace to those who are afraid. Teach us to forgive ourselves as freely as you forgive us. Help us to see our lives with your eyes full of promise, full of possibility, never disqualified. Give us courage to keep returning, no matter how many times we wander. Help us bring our honest selves to you, our questions, our doubts, our longing for love. Let your grace fill every broken place. Let your love be the voice we listen to, louder than fear or shame. And as we go from here, let us walk with new hope, knowing that coming home to you is always possible, always welcome, always real. Amen. If you feel led, share your story below or offer a word of encouragement to someone else. If these words have spoken to you, please subscribe for more conversations like this. Remember, no matter where you are, no matter how many times you start over, you are always loved, always welcome, always home. May you walk forward with peace and courage, and may your life, in all its imperfect beauty, shine as a light for others who are still searching for their way back.